Welcome back to Money Talks. Today, have you ever heard the phrase, you gotta live below your means? Well, today I'm gonna give you 4 ways you can live below your means and actually take actionable steps. But first, if this is your first time visiting the Money Talks channel, please take a moment and subscribe so that you're notified as soon as I upload new content. Number two, if you like the content, please give it a thumbs up for me just so I know to keep it coming. And lastly, if you're here on the channel of just visiting, please feel free to drop a comment and let me know what you think. So, oftentimes when you're trying to get control of your money, you've heard many people discuss all the different ways to do it. And a lot of times those terms and tips can be vague. One of the most frequent ones I hear and often hear people complain about is live below your means. What does that actually mean? Live below your means. Hey, I make $50,000. I need to live on $48,000. How does that actually work out? So, I'm going to give you 4 good ways to understand how you can actually live below your means in your budget today. Number one, if you have a 401k, you want to make sure you're invested at least to the match. This is the first way that you actually start to live below your means because you're actually bringing home less money because that's going into your 401k. That's also your baseline of investing so that you can start preparing for your retirement. Number two, you want to make sure that you're on an actual budget. Ideally, the zero based budget. The reason for that is when you look at, hey, I have $2,000 in the month and you write it in a zero based budget format, that means every dollar has already been allocated and planned for. So if you're actually living on that actual budget and you're staying within your confines and the boundaries that you set on your budget, you will, in fact, live below your means. But you can't just budget. You have to have an aspect in that budgeting that many people all too often miss. And that is give yourself allowance. That's number three. You have to have money to enjoy yourself, to do the things that you like to do. Even if you're getting out of debt, you may not have as much wiggle room from a cash perspective, but you want to have an allowance and you want to take that money out and have it in cash. The reason for having it in cash is because once that money is gone, you can't actually spend anymore. You would have to take from another category, or you're basically saying, hey, I'm going to go in debt so that I can have fun. And that way you can create a boundary to a self notification that, hey, I'm not living below my means if I continue to need to spend outside of the money that I have allocated. So that's number three. Really have an allowance within the budget so that you can stay within your means. Lastly, pay your credit card bills off every month. Now, this may seem kind of interesting. Why is this living below your means? Because most people usually tend to think, hey, I need that credit card activity to make sure that I'm actually generating credit, making sure that I'm having a positive history. And a lot of people all too often use it to pay a bill. Well, if you're not paying your credit card in full every month, that means you did not plan for a lot of those expenses. And likely you're living outside of your means. And if you're living outside of your means, that's where you start to run into problems when it comes to debt, but then also when it comes to you just wanting to make that particular purchase. So you want to, as we wrap up, live below your means. You want to look at 4 different ways. First, make sure you're doing at least a match if you're putting into a 401k. Second, you want to make sure you have to live on a budget. That way, you already have money set aside for every category that you need throughout the month. Number three, make sure you personally have an allowance. That way, you're giving yourself space to spend. And that way, you don't have to have any guilt by what you're doing because you're living in the confines of your budget that you decided on. And number four, don't actually, I'm sorry, pay off your bills every month. Pay off your bills in full in your credit card bills every month. This is one tricky way that you can actually make sure you're living within your means. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you too.